Hello, everyone. I'm reaching out with a heavy heart as I'm in desperate need of help. I'm facing a difficult time and urgently need some financial support. If you're able to, please help me. I promise to return the money as soon as I can. If anyone from India is willing to lend a hand, I've shared my UPI scanner. Even the smallest contribution can make a big difference in my situation. I'm not forcing anyone, but your kindness and support would mean the world to me. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. In the previous chapter, we saw Zhuo Yifan, despite his reputation as a demonic cultivator, demonstrate remarkable integrity. After a fierce battle, he refused to accept an undeserved victory, declaring that he wouldn't allow himself to be insulted by charity. His words earned the respect of even his rival, Wu Qingqiu, who acknowledged Zhuo Yifan's prideful yet honorable nature. Let's begin the chapter. The judge's gaze shifted between the groups before him, his expression steady and composed. After a moment, he nodded, his voice carrying authority and finality. Good. Since neither of you is contesting it, Zhuo Yifan's explanation clarifies how this team battle concluded. Thus, I hereby declare the Ultimate Clarity sect as the slightly better victor. The crowd erupted into thunderous applause, not only for the Ultimate Clarity sect, but also for Zhuo Yifan. This so-called soft meanie had somehow won their admiration. His straightforward approach, taking only what he believed he deserved, had offered a refreshing perspective. Even in his role as a demonic cultivator, Zhuo Yifan had shown a certain elegance that was hard to ignore. Demon Soul Sect members nodded, approvingly, seeing in Zhuo Yifan the epitome of what a true demonic cultivator should be. Yan Mo, observing from a distance, let out a sigh as he watched the scene unfold. Even demons have their path. Maybe I've been too indulgent of late, he mused, chuckling softly at himself. On the other side, Danner's eyes widened in disbelief, her voice tinged with amazement. Sister Ching Cheng, he just gave up the glory of standing at the top. Those venerables in his sect must be furious right now. Her astonishment didn't go unnoticed by Chu Ching Cheng, who smiled faintly, a warm nostalgia flickering in her gaze. The events before her reminded her of another time, another place. That's just who he is, she said softly, her thoughts drifting back to the 100-pill meeting. He hasn't changed. The girls exchanged knowing glances, their gazes shifting toward Zhuo Yifan with subtle admiration. Each look carried its own meaning, unspoken but evident. Xuan Xiaoyu, however, stood rooted in place, his fury barely contained, his fists clenched tightly as the crowd's murmurs reached his ears. Zhuo Yifan had turned the tide of public opinion, gaining respect and admiration even while rejecting the glory. Meanwhile, his own sect, the so-called righteous mystical heaven sect, was being openly mocked. It was an unbearable contrast. How is that fair? Xuan Xiaoyu thought bitterly, his frustration mounting. What he failed to understand was the deeper truth behind Zhuo Yifan's actions. Despite being cunning and calculating, Zhuo Yifan adhered to a set of principles, lines he refused to cross. It was this integrity, rare even among righteous sects, that drew people to him. In contrast, mystical, heaven sect had strayed from their righteous path. Their hypocrisy was evident, and it painted them in a far worse light than the openly self-serving demonic cultivators. People, whether they realized it or not, gravitated toward those who lived by a code, even a harsh one, over those who claimed righteousness but acted deceitfully. Zhuo Yifan's consistency, even as a demonic cultivator, earned him admiration. Mystical heaven sect's duplicity earned them contempt. That old coot, exalted He Ran remarked, a chuckle rumbling in his throat. He's been a judge at 5 Double Dragon gatherings, and this is the first time I've seen him so biased, declaring Ultimate Clarity sect as the winner with that slightly better nonsense. What a laugh. Exalted Bai Mei grinned slyly. He wasn't being biased, he was being clever. What he meant was that Zhuo Fan alone was superior, but since this was a team battle, Ultimate Clarity Sect's combined strength edged them out. It's his way of giving Zhuo Fan the recognition he deserves without undermining the rules. Hey, Rand scoffed, though his lips twitched in amusement. Petty, isn't he? Trying to look impartial while clearly favoring my demonic disciple? I wasn't going to point it out, but since you started it— Please, Bai Mei interrupted, rolling his eyes. Zhuo Fan is a demonic cultivator. He's practically made for your tutelage. My focus is on Ye Lin. He may have lost today, but under my guidance, he'll surpass them all. You'd better remember our little deal. He Ran nodded, his grin widening. Of course. The two will face off again, and that match will settle it. Let's see which of our disciples truly comes out on top. The two exalted elders burst into laughter, their rivalry as sharp as ever. Meanwhile, the judge raised his hand, signaling for silence. The murmurs and cheers died down as the crowd turned their attention back to him. Western lands double. Dragon gathering has now come to a close, he announced, his tone stern and authoritative. Next, we will tally the scores from the singles and team battles to determine the final rankings of the sects and the top 10 disciples of the Western lands. The atmosphere shifted immediately. The weight of the announcement settled heavily on everyone present. The Double Dragon Gathering wasn't just a competition, its outcome shaped the future of every sect and disciple involved. Turning to the disciples on stage, the judge gestured for them to step down. The assessment will take some time. You may return to your groups and rest. The participants cupped their hands respectfully before retreating to their respective factions. Back at the Demon Scheming Sect's area, Kui Lang carefully placed the injured Zhuo Fan onto a recliner, ensuring he was as comfortable as possible. Fiend Yang stormed over, his expression a mix of frustration and disbelief. Zhuo Fan, what were you thinking? He blurted out, his voice rising. You won and still passed on the reward? Do you have any idea what the top spot of the 9 sects is worth? The other venerables shared his sentiment, their faces etched with disappointment. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Fiend Yang continued, pacing back and forth. Do you realize how much the sect has lost because of this? We could have risen from a lower 3 sect to a middle 3 sect, and then to the superior 3 sects. And from there, to heaven, I suppose. Zhuo Fan interrupted, his tone laced with sarcasm. Fiend Yang froze mid-sentence, caught off guard. Zhuo Fan rolled his eyes. The tallest tree attracts the most wind. Do you really think a tiny lower 3 sect like ours can handle being the top dog overnight? Without the strength to back it up, we'd crumble under the pressure. Fiend Yang's expression shifted as the implications sank in. Power and status come with responsibilities, Zhuo Fan continued, his gaze sharp. If Demon Scheming Sect rises too fast, we'll become an easy target for our enemies. Wealth and fame are burdens if you're not ready to carry them. Fiend Yang finally nodded, his earlier frustration giving way to reluctant understanding. I see now. You thought this through. If we aim too high too soon, we'll only bring trouble upon ourselves. The other venerables exchanged guilty looks, realizing the truth in Zhuo Fan's words. Their initial disappointment was replaced by admiration for the young man's foresight. Thank heavens you were in charge of this Double Dragon Gathering, Fiend Yang admitted, wiping his brow. The venerables nodded in agreement, their respect for Zhuo Fan growing. They had been reluctant to follow his lead initially, but now they saw the wisdom in his decisions. Zhuo Fan's calm demeanor and strategic thinking had proven invaluable in navigating the complexities of the gathering. As Zhuo Fan rested, the venerables silently acknowledged the depth of his insight, understanding why the sect leader had entrusted him with such responsibility. Zhuo Fan's vision extended far beyond theirs, and for the first time, they felt truly humbled.